Berlin, Germany. And I just wanted to quickly jump on just to talk about something which came up this morning with someone where we were talking about the idea of stress and whether it's actually ever a good thing. And as I was speaking to someone, they said, well, the thing is, sometimes I find if I'm under stress, it can help me prepare for something, whether it's getting ready for an exam or a presentation or something that I know that I have coming up. That little bit of pressure can give me the impetus and motivation I need to actually kind of get moving on something. Now, that's absolutely true. A small amount of pressure in the run up to an event can provide that sort of sense of momentum or motivation, let's say, to get something achieved. However, there is a really important distinction between being stretched and feeling stressed. Now, essentially, when we think about stress, what we're talking about is when we face demands which outweigh our resources or ability to cope. So, this can never, by design, be a good experience. You can maybe even imagine it like this elastic band. If I stretch this elastic band, if we pull this right to its capacity, it's almost as if that elastic band is kind of living to its potential, if it was a live living thing. But of course, if we stretch that too far, what's going to happen is it's going to snap. And it's here that if that elastic band snaps, it's not going to be possible for it to carry on performing in any positive way. And this, for many people, is where they might experience burnout, for instance, as the result of chronic or excess stress. Just to illustrate this a little bit further, if we have a look here, this is a quite a well-known curve which we often refer to when we're talking about stress. And you can see here that there's that middle point, which is kind of optimal. So this is that point where we're in a position where we're trying to use our skills and our resources in order to achieve something. Maybe we're at work or we're going to a new event and we're having to stretch ourselves to talk to people or to perform in some capacity or other. But if we're able to meet that challenge, that can be a really positive experience. Even though it might be slightly uncomfortable at the time, we'll come away afterwards feeling like that was a worthwhile and meaningful thing. It gives us that sense of kind of fulfillment and satisfaction. However, of course, if we are in a situation where we're taken too far and actually we just don't have the skills to cope, then this is where we can start falling into overload. And this is really a place of stress, which if it's not dealt with sooner rather than later, that can start to manifest as kind of chronic stress, which can lead to burnout and health problems and other psychological issues, which we really want to avoid at any cost at all. And whilst we're on here, let's just briefly talk about the stress response. And I'm sure since COVID, there's been so much more information about what stress is, but this is just a kind of very brief overview, really. So we know that stress evolved as a response in order to ensure our safety in high-risk situations. So, for instance, historically, if we were facing a fight with a neighbouring tribe or we had an animal running towards us that was putting us under some kind of danger, the fight-flight response would enable us to react in an appropriate way to danger, whether it's either fighting or running, or sometimes we might even say freezing. If there's no other way to escape a situation, we might freeze to hope that that danger will pass. Now, whilst that's an incredibly useful mechanism to ensure our safety in high risk and dangerous situations, of course, it's not the nature of threats that we tend to face today. But because this stress response isn't very intelligent, it's not able to distinguish between real life, high risk physical threats and the more common, pervasive kind of psychological stresses that we tend to face today. So when we're talking about these, for instance, well, psychological threats might be, let's say, for instance, we're feeling bullied by colleagues at work, or maybe people at school are kind of keeping us at a distance or calling us names or not including us in activities with our peers. And of course, this represents a psychological threat. Equally, seeing people obtain things that we would actually like for ourselves, that feeling of envy or jealousy, which can really kind of strike deeply through us, this also represents a sense of threat because we see people having things that we would like. And of course, if we're worrying that we won't get that for ourselves, it starts kind of bringing our sense of well-being into question. Now, we also have just feeling unsafe. Of course, maybe we have problems with neighbours, or maybe we don't feel safe walking the streets at night. So even if there is no immediate threat, even if there's no direct risk or danger that we're confronting, just having that ominous sense of danger or threat around us can leave us in that kind of permanent state of hypervigilance. And then lastly, we have feeling cornered. Now, this is something which many of us experience, and unfortunately, this is something which tends to happen from a younger and younger age, especially considering the kind of range of performance assessments and pressures that young people at school, even from primary school and upwards, are now facing these days. And as we get older, we might be facing the kind of incoming bills that we can't pay or deadlines that we can't manage. Or sometimes it might even just be the phone at our side that just doesn't stop ringing and demanding for our attention. And of course, it's the accumulation of these different aspects of life, these different threats, if you like, that because there's no specific way that we can manage them in terms of we can't run away from a bill that can't get paid, or we can't kind of avoid or escape a feeling of jealousy, for instance, if we see other people getting things that we want. And so what can happen then, if we don't find ways of coping with the psychological threats that we face, they can then be building up in the background, and that can leave us, if not resolved, in a state of hypervigilance. It's that feeling of there being that danger which is always present, and we're not quite sure where it's coming from or how it might affect us. Anyway, I've gone on and said a little bit more there than I wanted to, but just to bring it right back to the beginning of the question, is stress ever a good thing? Stress is never a good thing. It's good to be stretched. It's even good to be uncomfortable sometimes. If that inspires us and encourages us to try and do something, if it motivates us to act upon a concern or to try and learn a new skill to get ready for something positive in life, that being stretched is really useful. But stress, that's not something we want to experience. And we'll pick up on that tomorrow, some ways that we can start to deal with that. All right, take care. See you soon.